Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Experience Kills, back this time with a very special guest helping me in this discussion of a new game. I've got the lovely Leia with me.
Hello.
Don't be too scared, it's fine. We're just going to be talking about a video game, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, so we're talking about Outward today, which is a new game that's just come out from a studio called 9 Dots Studio in French Canada, Quebec specifically, and it definitely has some of that European vibe about it. So Outward is a open world RPG of the action variety, but rather than your usual ones of that nature, say Dragon Age Inquisition or the Fable kind of universe, we have a more simulated experience, if you want, maybe inspired by Dark Souls or Kingdom Come Deliverance or the other types of survival focused video game experiences and roguelikes that we've been seeing a lot of recently on PC, but also now more and more coming to console. So what we have that means is a game which has got quite a sort of easygoing look to it, but a fairly punishing difficulty curve. Now, obviously, this game's touting itself, as well as all those sort of survival aspects and realistic elements that they're bringing to the fantasy RPG, as a cooperative multiplayer experience, online and in, most importantly, split-screen co-op, which is what I tried here with Leia. And should we say we had mixed results? Yeah, so first of all, let's talk about the tutorial, which is a separate load from the main menu. I didn't find that tutorial particularly helpful in many ways. It felt strange. It felt like an afterthought. It felt like it had been thrown together almost, and it definitely didn't feel particularly polished. It
was frustrating, I feel. It made me I wasn't happy.
It didn't onboard you into the experience.
No, not in the slightest. I mean, I was excited when I started, but then I got confused and then I got frustrated.
Yeah, I think that sort of sums up this game in a way. I mean, what it is that the 9 Dot have sort of set out this idea that, you know, gamers aren't stupid, they can work it out, they can look after themselves. And they're right, that's absolutely true. But if you're going to put a tutorial in at the beginning of an experience, you kind of expect it to explain the game's mechanics a little bit better. Otherwise, don't bother with the tutorial. Just throw you in and let yourself work it all out. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, I've done that before. It works.
So obviously, I was really excited to try this in co-op with yourself. However, we immediately had problems.
Yeah.
Like, if you're watching the video now, you can see the kind of bugs we were having, which basically made it unplayable for me on the top screen because there was this graphical glitch that was like these just crazy textures were just not loading from the light source from the sun in the sky, and it was a train wreck. We had to stop. We couldn't fix it, and we had to stop playing.
It was the end of days in your world.
It was, and it was weird because it wasn't affecting your screen on the bottom half of the TV, but on the top it was just completely busted. And I think what that is speaking to is that this is an incredibly ambitious game. It's huge, a massive open world with these sort of integrated systems. And it's a small team. 9 Dot Studios are not a big bunch of guys. It's a very small group in Quebec, and I love the ambition. It's something I really enjoy seeing in these indie games. Developers really shooting for the moon. I use that saying quite a lot when I talk about them. And sometimes you hit and sometimes you miss. And I always respect them for trying. I just think this time, perhaps, they bit off more than they could chew.
I mean, yeah, I was really looking forward to it because this is the kind of game that I like to play. But yeah, I got really confused.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, they're not hand-holding in any way. Once you get through that tutorial, which is a lot of text, and it takes a really long time, this tutorial, with very little kind of engagement or hook to make you actually want to get through it, and it feels like it's punishing you almost. It's so unplayable. And then you get into the game, you go through this character creator, and it's pretty basic. And then you're kind of thrown into the game in co-op. And I also played it in single player a lot as well. And frankly, the visuals don't really get much of a bump in that. I mean, the graphics in this game are definitely compromised due to the scope of the experience that the developer is trying to produce. It looks rough, doesn't it?
It looks rough. I mean, it doesn't look, oh my god, terrible. But
no.
It's yeah.
It's not when you're playing on your Xbox One or your PS4 or your PC and you're playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey and you're playing The Division 2 and you're playing Dark Souls and you're playing The Surge and all these games that are action RPGs or shooters or loot games or anything. This just feels like a generation ago. This feels visually definitely nowhere near where we're at right now on the current generation of hardware, especially 5 years in.
About 10 years ago?
Maybe a little less, maybe more like I'd say sort of 6-7 years ago. I mean, if you're going back to I'd say the tail end of the previous generation is where the visuals kind of put it. But once again, it's a compromise you know, due to the ambition of this smaller team to achieve this hugely sort of massive game world with these systems and they are trying to do something different. And to be honest, when you get into it, if this is your kind of game, if you enjoy the survival type games, if you enjoy those games that punish you and don't hold your hand and commit you to the choices that you make, you will find things to enjoy in Outward. But the problem is you've got to get past the look of the game, you've got to get past the clunkiness of the interface, you've got to get past the graphical problems and the bugs that are everywhere in single and multiplayer, and especially in multiplayer. I think they really should have just not tried to do co-op perhaps on split screen. I haven't tried it online. I think maybe they had to compromise less for that, but who knows what the netcode is like. So like I said, I don't really know anybody else playing it, so I've not been able to test that. However, yeah, in split screen it's clearly a compromised experience. That means, yeah, maybe you should have just, you know, cut that, made that difficult call as a producer and said, let's focus on the single player, much like the Kingdom Come Deliverance, which comes to mind for me as the closest proximity game to this experience, that kind of big open world game. Now that's a first person sort of historical simulator, and this game professes to be much more fantasy. Do you think this type of punishing experience fits in this kind of quite silly, friendly appearance, childlike fantasy? I mean, it's not the fantasy of Dark Souls, grim dark and all that, and Get Good. It's much more like Fable, it felt like to me in appearance. And do you think that that kind of difficulty of the survival elements fits with that?
No, I mean, Fable was like cheery and quirky, and this doesn't feel like that at all. It kind of feels like Fable without those bits.
Without the soul a little bit.
Yeah.
Without the heart.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sometimes when you're making a game which is so system-based, it can fall down when it comes to those character interactions. You know, there are cutscenes, but they're all kind of text-based. There is some dialogue in there in the game that's voiced, but it's like when you're talking to a quest giver, it'll only be the first line of dialogue that's recorded, which is understandable because, again, there's loads of characters. You're doing this in-house. You know, they're doing this in a not necessarily native English-speaking territory, which is Quebec, so obviously there's bilingual aspects to that. So the writing's fine, I think. The characters are fine. The world building is fine. None of it really sets itself apart, though. No elements of this game went, "Whoa, I'm unique, pay attention to me." It just felt like a bit of a muddy, generic mess. You know, and it's priced accordingly. I think it's this sort of £30-35 sort of price point, which is absolutely fair, I think, for this game, considering the amount of time and effort that's gone into it. I'm just not sure what the selling point is for it. For example, when this game came out, I had no idea about this game existing. It came out, and I heard about it, and I was able to get a code to review it. However, you know, until that moment, I'd heard nothing about the existence of this title, and I think there's nothing really to get behind it, to push it, to promote it. It's just very much, you've seen it all before, you've seen it done better, and you've seen it a lot more polished in previous games, especially on the previous generation. I respect the fact that it's trying to do this simulated hardcore experience in a fantasy setting. I'm just not sure it makes sense for that genre.
I mean, I liked the bit where you literally wake up in your underwear. That was hardcore, you know, go for it right at the beginning.
Yeah. You
have nothing.
Yeah.
And I liked the bit where the beginning of the story that you kind of have to pay off your grandmother's blood debt or something like that. That was interesting. It was just the actual mechanics of it. I couldn't get through it. Yeah,
and I think it's a game that could have spent more time in the oven. Like, yeah. The bugs are egregious. They're really, really severe. And it makes any game hard to recommend, in spite of how good it is, when technical problems like that abound. For example, recently we discussed Anthem a lot, and that's got lots of bugs. Obviously, it's a very different experience. However, the core gameplay was a lot of fun, so you could kind of forgive some of the glitchiness aspects to it and the problems with it. However, where we are right now with Outward is that, you know, the bugs, they affect the enjoyment so much of what is quite a middle of the road experience that it's hard to really look past it. So once again, respect the ambition. I like the decisions, the direction this game has taken. I like the ideas. I'm definitely interested in seeing what 9 Dots does going forward. They're clearly a studio with an ethos and ambition and drive, and I love that in the indie scene. However, right now where Outward is, it's hard to recommend. It's hard to really say this is worth picking up. if you're a massive fan of the genre, if you're a massive fan of fantasy RPGs and you fancy something a bit more difficult, a bit more punishing, less hand-holding, there's no mini-map, for example, there's no real map at all. You just have to get out there and get lost and try and find your way through. And if that idea grabs you, then this is a cool game to try out, because there's not a lot of games quite like that. However, if you're looking for a more conventional fantasy RPG experience, it's not Outward I would recommend.
No.
Not this time. So that's been another exciting episode of Experience Kills. Thank you very much for coming on, Leia.
It's all right.
It's all right, no worries. You can obviously find us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. That really helps with visibility. There are also audio versions for all of our videos available, so you can listen on the bus or down the gym or working out or going to the shops. You know, you can have us in your ears all the time, which frankly you need, don't you?
I would say so.
Yeah, definitely. And that can be found on iTunes and Spotify, and there's a raw RSS feed, and all the links for that are on the YouTube videos, but you can also find them on the Twitter page and stuff like that. So please join us in our continuing adventures checking out video games. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.